I'm delighted to be here. I'm overwhelmed. I was hoping there'd be two of us, Eugene and me, and we could go home. But it didn't work that way. So I'm honored. And I know that Eugene would feel the same way, that you're willing to share your time and thoughts and so on. We've been doing a lot of talking about how this might go. I'm one of these people who love to teach interactively. I want response. I want involvement. I want you to formulate your questions. I want you to share your ideas. Please, not all your war stories, but your ideas. And if it could be, when you have a question, if you just kind of bob it up and put it into the form of a question, we will attempt to deal with it. We may defer it and ask you to remind us in a minute that it happened, so that we can use your question at the appropriate place. The tentative format for how we'd like to handle this evening's time, Kay mailed me, or faxed me this 4-page, tightly type-printed, the smallest font that she could find, solid page of what she wanted to happen this evening. And I wrote back immediately and I said, Kay, darling, we're looking at a 4-day seminar. And I don't think, with all the passion and love that you have for your breed, that you're prepared to take up a 4-day seminar at this point. So we sort of shortened it down. We don't have all the answers. I'm not even sure that Eugene and I or you have all the questions. We're going to try and find the questions and hopefully look at some of the answers that we've had. I think Eugene and I have been probably breeding English Cockers pretty close to the same amount of time. I started with an American Cocker in 1953. He taught me a great deal of humility and turned me over to English Cockers. And I started with my first English Cocker from England in 1960, and I know Eugene was in the ballpark of what, 1959, Eugene? Yeah. So we're sort of the same ilk generation. We're both passionate about the breed, are very, very opinionated. We have very strong feelings about what it is we're trying to achieve, and I think that for your efforts in English Cockers, please keep that in your head, that you need to work out for yourself what it is that you want to achieve. What are your goals? What are your dreams? What are your visions for what an English Cocker is all about? I'm supposed to talk a little bit about issues in the breed, what makes a good breeding program or a good breeder, and Eugene is going to pick up and carry the ball on selecting stock, establishing a line, and I know that this is just going to open up a can of worms of all the things that we need to talk about. So hopefully, I don't want this to be a judge's education. This is not for the purpose of teaching people how to judge English Cockers. It is hopefully because I believe that judges get blamed, and I'm wearing both hats. Judges get blamed for, well, look what the judge has done to the breed by choosing these dogs. And I sort of go, wait a minute, who put those dogs in the ring to start with for those judges to have to judge? It's the breeder. So I think it is a two-way responsibility, and it's the responsibility that has to be acknowledged and shared between both breeder and judge, that we hold in our hands the future and the fate of our breed. And we are, at this point, in my opinion, doing some things to our breed that we need to stand back, look at, and talk about. What are some of the issues for me on the current state of the breed? Health. No question. God bless Addie. I am just so proud and appreciative of the part that she plays in keeping us informed of those health issues. We need to talk about them and share them. Thank you. We're talking about some limited gene pool concerns. We do have a limited gene pool in this breed. We are working with small numbers, and we're working with very interrelated kennel numbers. We're looking at small kennels. The days of the kennels of 50s and 60 dogs are no longer there. We can't afford to have those kennels And it creates a whole different set of anomalies for us in trying to plan and organize how we're going to work with the smaller numbers of dogs that we have to retain the good ones, choose the right ones for our breeding, and still not have to mortgage our homes 3 times over. We are a breed, in my opinion, that is terribly affected by fads and trends. We are very, very vulnerable to the pretty dog, the flashy dog, not necessarily the correct dog, that does a lot of winning, establishes his or her mark on the breed. And let's face it, the boys do the greatest amount of establishing just by the sheer volume of the numbers of those little sperm floating around that they are prepared to share. And I think we have to be really, really aware of that issue, that a very, very spectacular, very powerful, and I hate these labels, but I'm going to use it, the all-breed judge's dog, which isn't always the breeder's preference, that sets up in the breed a condition where we have a recurring fault or a series of things that are happening in our breed that, gee, they're a noisy breed too, aren't they sometimes? That we have to be aware of and sort of stand back every now and then and look at the perspective and take a grouping. So we're going to talk a little bit about fads and trends. I'm hoping to talk about strengths in the breed. I think there are some wonderful things that have happened in the last 10 years in this breed. I think we have made great progress. We've shortened up our dogs. We've got away from the really big, rangy, settery looking dogs. There's a few still, but we're getting away from those dogs. We are aware of, I think, our problems in the fronts. We are aware of our shoulder assembly issues. We're more aware of top lines. I think that those of you who were here last night for the invitational saw some very, very spectacular, beautiful dogs with good top lines who know where to put their tails, who know how to reach, drive, kick, and follow through. They are all one-piece dogs, and I think that we have made progress. We're definitely getting, but I'm seeing things. I'm seeing, for example, at this national, more dogs with peg tails that are up in the air than I have seen in a long time, and I am concerned, because I think it is not characteristic of the breed. I'm seeing dogs without forechest and without fronts, and I am concerned about this. I'm not saying that this is something we have to go all upset about, but it's something we need as breeders to be conscious of, talk about, and say, all right, what can we do? Where can we go with this issue? I'm seeing dogs that move fast, but don't go anywhere. They don't cover the ground. Their legs go very, very fast. So do their handlers. But the dogs themselves, when you look at them, are really not getting anywhere. So I think this is an issue that we need to talk about as breeders. It's not a breed for the faint of heart. I read that somewhere, and I think it was Jill Lindheim actually that did that quote, and Jill's not with us this week. But it is not a breed for it's a breed of great heartache, and I've been there. I know the heartache. And I know I'm stubborn. I know I'm not going to give in to the heartache, but I also know that it is a breed, as a breeder, that has a great deal of pain associated with it. And I think that with our issues that are arising, as Addie mentioned today, the autoimmune health issues that are arising in our breed, I'm concerned about those, and I think they're issues we need to talk about it later as to how we can handle and where we're going. So that's sort of where I am on the topics that I want to talk about. I want to start a little bit with, and I'm probably going to ping pong just a wee bit on this one, but what makes a responsible breeder? And some of you have, I think, a quote that Kay contributed, and I just think it's wonderful. And on the chance that some of you don't have it, I want to share some highlights. First of all, this one. Breeding dog is like an art class. Your art teacher gives you your tools, your point, your paint, and your easel, and whatever else you need, and then tells you, this is your project. These are your boundaries. Now create. And I think that the standard is like that. The standard says, here are your boundaries. Because people interpret it differently, you can move about, but you must stay in the boundaries. Your creation may be different than mine, but we are both within the boundaries. Breeding dogs is a form of expression with the boundaries set forth by the standard. In order to improve the breed, we must all be able to express ourselves within the boundaries. And I was so impressed with that I just would like to share it with you. And this originator of that is Joanne Davis. And I think that we could give Joanna an appreciation for her thoughtfulness and her creativity in that statement. I think the other thing that arose in the handouts from Kay was her beautiful set of principles of basic breeding. And can I assume that everybody here does have a copy of that? Because I don't need to read to you. There's a few of you that don't. Okay, Kay, do you have additionals on that basic breeding principles that we could get? Okay. All right, so there will be some additionals, because I commend these to you. I felt I could have written them. I heartfeltly subscribe to the 20 basic breeding principles, and if you don't have it, make sure that you get yourself a copy. So that's one thing. All right, a few additionals. I want you, when you're thinking of breeding dogs, to strive to improve on the quality of dogs that you bred in your previous last litter. Always be thinking that what you set out to do on this litter, hopefully you're striving to make it better than what you had on your last litter. Always strive to improve on the quality of the female, the dam that you started with. Always be looking, is this puppy better than the bitch that she came out of, or he came out of? Always be totally honest with yourself about the health, temperament, and fertility of the animals you breed from. I'm sorry, but if you have a bitch who routinely has a cesarean, who is routinely giving you one puppy, who's missing every second breeding, you have a problem. And it is a problem that you do not wish to continue breeding from. You need to understand structure and conformation. One of the things that Kay was really anxious that I did was spend some time talking about what the English Cocker is meant to look like, an understanding of basic anatomy, the function, and the relationship to the form that we require. So I thought that might be a good place just to kind of catch my breath and would you like to spend a little time talking about basic structure and function in terms of what we're trying to do when we select breeding stock? I see some nods, so I will assume that that is so. I've asked Debbie to bring her black boy. And while she's getting that, I'm going to just carry on and I'll come back to the anatomy. I think we're continually in a position when we breed dogs of having to learn about the breed. I learned something today that I didn't carry around with me. Sometimes it's a matter of just raising it up to a different level of consciousness in my head, but there was something that happened today that made me think about. I think you have to know your standard. I don't think there's any excuse for not having read and reread and knowing the boundaries, as Joanne puts it. I also think you have to have knowledge of pedigrees. You have to get involved with looking at a type of the animals that you're dealing with. Breeding dogs is skill, science, and damn good luck. And that good luck comes from intuition, it comes from a sense of what works and what's nicks. I did an outcross breeding that produced newsflash. I don't know what made me do that breeding. I guess I had what I considered to be a very English-type bitch, moderate size, short back, good flow of neck into shoulder, moderate angulation front and rear, with an exquisite headpiece and a dark eye. And I thought, okay, I need to just fancy her up a little bit. The dog at the time that struck me as having that ability to fancy her just a little bit, it was just a picture of the kind of dog that I wanted to produce out of this bitch, resulted from the breeding that I chose to do to Canobo Capricorn. And Capricorn gave me Bransfield Newsflash, who for me became kind of like the foundation picture of a compact, moderate dog. And it was one of those breedings where I was looking at pedigree. I was looking at an outcross breeding in this case, but I was looking at a pedigree that had in it certain things that I wanted to acquire, add to my breeding program, and also allowed me to compensate for what I considered the bitch needed. And I felt I bettered and improved on her with the breeding. I also ask that when you're breeding that you take a look at keeping records. Kay's comment of pictures at 7 weeks, pictures at 12 weeks, pictures at 9 months, 6 months, a year, pictures at 2.5, pictures at 5, and pictures hopefully at 14, that allow you to see the developmental changes in your dogs so that you can learn what's going to happen as your dogs mature, develop, and alter. It also includes learning about basic anatomy, learning about where the shoulder fits on the dog. And I guess I preach basic essentials, developing a picture of my English Cocker. What is it that I want my English Cocker to look like? I have certain things that are essential. There's no give, there's no leverage on these. There are certain things that I will not accept within my own breeding dogs. I want them to be moderate. I don't want them to be exaggerations in any way. I want them to be balanced. I want the proportion of height to length to fill my eye with a sense that this dog is in balance. I want him to be fairly short coupled, not so short that he cannot move, short enough that again he gives me that sense of proportion and balance. I want him to be of sound temperament. I want a dog that is easy to live with, that doesn't drive me crazy barking, that doesn't spin like a top every time I smile at him. I want a dog that's stable and easy to be around. That's just my choice of an English Cocker. Perhaps 3/4 of what I choose to sell, I make sure goes to good family pet homes. And those are the people that want that kind of dog, and I think that's why they come for an English Cocker. And I think we need to not forgive those crazies and put them into our breeding program. An essential for me is a firm top line. I can't handle a dog that sags in the middle or roaches. I think probably I'm more upset about an animal that gives me a roached level or a rising top line than a dog that gives me a slightly dipping top line. Yes?
I'm sorry, did you want questions?
I don't mind, we'll try.
One of the things I'm having difficulties distinguishing between is a roach that's structural and a roach that comes from a dog that gallops a lot. It's just really tightened up its stomach muscles out of proportion.
What does he do when he's on a loose lead and he's relaxed? That would be my, I guess, the criteria. An animal that is tense because, you know, he's anxious to go, or he's tucking himself up and putting a roach into his top line. For that, I take him off lead in the garden and watch him when he's running loose and running free. You still have a training problem to get him relaxed if you want to get rid of it. I think it's also important to distinguish between a roach and what In your anatomy, the dog has a slight rise over the croup. There is that loin rise that is there, that is part of the anatomy and the structure. Be careful not to lose the awareness that the dog must have that for flexibility. There is no flexibility in that back if you do not have a slight rise. But that is muscled, and you lose that feeling. But this, when you start getting narrow loins, you are going to find that you have problems. And I'm getting into anatomy, and I'm coming to my dog in a second. I also want a headpiece that looks like an English cocker, not like a setter, not like a Coke bottle. I want something that is going to give me a soft, pleasing expression. Then there's a whole lot of other things that are desirables, but that you're not going to find. Breeding dogs, in every dog that you breed, you are dealing with compromise, you are dealing with accommodation, you are dealing with a little bit of adjustment that has to come. I want you to have a goal when you breed a dog. Don't breed it for the sake of it. I want you to have a plan as to why you're doing the breeding. I want to say to you, please, please have a vision about where you want to be 3 generations from the breeding, not just the immediate. Be thinking where you're going to go with the kids of the kids, not just that breeding that you're doing right now. That is a breed characteristic. There's nothing we can do about that one. I ask that you be your own stiffest critic. Not your neighbors, not your competitors, but your own stiffest critic. Be critical of your own dogs. Be kind to your neighbors, but be critical of your own. I want you to also, as you are your own stiffest critic, be your own firmest supporter. Because if you're not supporting yourself in your vision and what you want to do, you're going to get very discouraged. You're probably not going to last more than the proverbial 5 years, and you're not going to breed good dogs. I'm going to ask if Debbie would put her black dog up, and I want to talk a little bit, and I'm not sure whether black was the right dog to choose. Eugene, could you put the lights on, please? I think there's a black switch there that says off, on. On, I think, is what we want. The second set of lights further over. Thank you. One of the problems that arises in shoulders, I want to talk a little bit about my concerns on lack of forechest and lack of front on this breed. I think that we tread a fine line between a dog that is overdone in the front and a dog that is balanced and in proportion. And I think part of our dilemma is sort of, we talk about the McDowell-Lyons 45-degree angle. Get rid of it. It doesn't exist. I'm sorry. It's not there. We're lucky to get 30. But I think more importantly than measuring angles, and I'm not a measurer, and if any of you are members of the Casey Gardner School of Science for Dogs and like to do measurement, I'm sorry, I have great difficulty. I don't think we're accurate, but I do think that our eye can be trained to look in the right places to see what's happening. And one of the things that happens is in identifying where the withers is, and Kay particularly asked, this is her little item here. Your front shoulder is